So today we're going to look at LAFC. The media proclaimed best team in the league is currently in ninth place in the Western Conference. And at one point this season, they were actually dead last in the Western Conference. And I think at that point there was a lot of LAFC fans that was panicking about this team of why in the world is this team dead last in the Western Conference and off to such a slow start. And, even though they have now got themselves back up to ninth place, that last game also has continued some panic in terms of LAFC fans because that game against NYCFC, they lost 2-1 in that game despite the fact that they were up a man in that game and inexplicably gave up a late goal while NYCFC was down to 10 men. And we'll talk a little bit more about the struggle that they tend to have whenever they go up a man in a game a little bit later in this video. But first of all, in terms of the start of the season, well, they start with a record of 2-2-3 after 8 weeks and after 7 games that they played this season. They scored 8 goals so far this season, which is right around the average in terms of the amount of goals that have been scored so far this year, but definitely nowhere near as what LAFC was expected to do. This is not supposed to be a team with all the talent that they have on the attacking end. Should be right in the bang average in terms of the goal scoring mark. And of course, the goal allowed mark is 9 goals, which is also right bang average in terms of their defensive play. And it's gone a little bit better, I will say, in terms of their defense this season, because last year their defense was a leaking fire at the back. But the goal differential so far this season is -1, and as I mentioned, they're now sitting in ninth place in the Western Conference. Now, when you look at the first 7 games that they have in the reserve, they started the season well with them winning 2-0 against Austin FC. But then they drew 1-1 against the Seattle Sounders, and keep in mind that was a game where I think that was one that LAFC will be happy to get a point against the Sounders because they were a little bit depleted heading into that game, and no doubt that the Sounders were just all over LAFC in that game. And I kind of talk about on my Tuesday video about the Sounders of how that was probably a game that they clearly should have won. But then the very next week, they drew 1-1 against the Houston Dynamo before losing 2-1 against the Galaxy in that El Trafico. And then they went up to Lumen's Field to play against the Sounders, and they lost 2-0 at that point. And up until that point, they were sitting dead last in the Western Conference. And this is where there's a lot of panic that is going on in the LAFC fan base, and also a lot of laughters in terms of the other fan base, because I feels like it, especially when you, of course, go on Reddit, there tends to be some kind of hatred toward LAFC, and whenever they tends to not do very well, they always kind of make some memes about them and the fact that I guess maybe this is also what happened when you are self-proclaimed the media's favorite team, and obviously the media is trying their best in terms of defending them. They're still the best team in the league, even though they're at the bottom of the Western Conference up to that point. Now, they did get a much-needed win against the Colorado Rapids in the next game by winning 2-1 at home. But then the last game, that's what I talked about earlier, where they had a 1-0 lead, and they did give up a bit of a late goal in the 78th minute. But then they went up a man in that game, and it looks like for sure they were going to get that second goal. And then they concede in the 90th minute to lose 2-1 in that game. And that was might be the most painful loss if you are an LAFC fan. I mean, I know the El Trafico loss was definitely painful too, because they were definitely the better team in that game, and their finishing kind of let them down. But this one hurts because of the fact that they were playing at home and they were up a man in the last 10 minutes of the game. And at minimum, if you're up a man in the last 10 minutes of the game at home, at the bare minimum, you should not be getting no less than a point out of that game. And the fact that they didn't get anything out of that game, it just shows you how there's an understandable reason why LAFC fans are very concerned of how the start of this team has, because this is supposed to be an MLS Cup contender that is off to a slow start. Now, the good news for LAFC is that when you look at the next couple of games that they had, the schedule does get a little bit easier for them. They got the Houston Dynamo at home before playing against FC Dallas at home, so they're going to play the 2 Texas team in their next 2 games. Then they do go on the road against Sporting KC, which that's not going to be easy, before going on the road against RSL, which I guess that's won't be easy, but RSL has looked like the team what we kind of expect, where they're not really a decent one. And then of course the very next one, they of course play against Austin FC. That's definitely going to be a tough one, because Austin FC wants some revenge after what happened in the first game of the season. Then they got RSL at home before going on the road to Providence Park to play against the Portland Timbers. That's definitely going to be probably one, if not the toughest game that they're going to be facing in their next couple of games before they do play against the Vancouver Whitecaps at home. So, again, they do have a mixture of some easy and tough game, but you expect that all these easy games that they are going to get in their schedule, they should be able to get all 3 points and hopefully make up for the slow start they have, because as much as they are in the ninth place in the Western Conference, because the West is so log jammed right now, and that there's like a 3 point gap, I think, but between second through 11th place. If LAFC can get on a roll, then they can definitely get themselves back at the top of the Western Conference. Well, not at the top, because the Seattle Sounders are head and shoulder above everybody right now in the West, but close to near the top of the Western Conference right now. Top goal scored for LAFC this season. You got one of my favorite player, Corey Barrett, currently leads the chart with 3 goals alongside with Diego Rossi. But then you got Atuesta and Cifuentes with 1 goal. And you notice there's no Vela on that list. He still have not scored a single goal so far this season. So not only the fact that LAFC is off to a slow start, Carlos Vela is also off to a slow start this season, but it's understandable because he has been injured and has been spending a little bit more time on the IR this season than actually be on the pitch. But top assist leader for LAFC, you got Corey Barrett and Latif Blessing with 2 assists, followed by Atuesta, Blackman, and Mark Anthony Kay, and I think 4 other LAFC players that currently has an assist for this team, or actually 3 other players that has an assist for this team this season. Shots leader for LAFC, you got Atuesta, currently leads the team with 16 shots, followed by Corey Barrett and Diego Rossi with 12 shots apiece. Then you got Danny Maswatsky with 8 shots and Jose Cifuentes with 7 shots. Shots on target leader, unsurprisingly, it's Atuesta again with 6 shots on target, but he's actually tied with Corey Barrett and Diego Rossi also with 6 shots on target. Danny Maswatsky followed that with 4 shots on target, and then Latif Blessing with 3 shots on target to round out the top 5 list of the shots on target leaders so far for LAFC. So, what has gone wrong for LAFC in terms of this slow start, and we'll kind of talk about maybe some solution that they have. Well, they're having trouble in the attack. I mean, this team definitely has looked nowhere near the free-flowing LAFC attack that we are accustomed. And in some way, they're kind of suffering the same fate of what happened to Atlanta last season, where Atlanta in 2020, when they did lose their most important player in Joseph Martinez, they really struggle in terms of the attack. And it's similar how LAFC losing Carlos Vela and then also at times losing Diego Rossi, they just lost 2 of their most important piece. So, I'm assuming most likely when both of those guys, both of these guys are back on the pitch, but when Vela is going to be hitting his stride, and also when Rossi, of course, would be hitting his stride, this attack should be much better than what we've seen in these first couple of games. Now, that being said, there's been a lot of rumors saying that Rossi could potentially be sold off either in the summer or in the winter transfer window, and because of the fact that it seems like this LAFC attack is heavily reliant on Rossi and Vela, it just kind of expose the depth that they have in this team. And for a long time, this LAFC team under Bob Bradley, there's always tends to be a lot of good depth pieces, and they tends to be too deep almost in every position. But ever since that Supporters Shield winning year, these last couple of years, they haven't really have as much depth as we once thought that they of course have. So, if they do lose Rossi either in the summer or in the winter transfer window, they're going to have to eventually find a replacement for him. And knowing the fact that this summer, I'm assuming they're also going to try to spend some money on their attack, because they're probably going to have at least one DP slot open, knowing the fact that Brian Rodriguez, who's currently on loan with them, most likely he's not going to be coming back for this LAFC team, and he'll probably sold off to another team, or the team that he's currently on loan with in the Segunda division. So that opens up one DP slot, and they can use that to potentially find someone on the attack that can make their attack much stronger. But yeah, it just also shows you that they definitely need some reinforcement going forward, and that they just simply can't always rely on Rossi and Vela, and just hope that they could of course stay healthy for the entire season to of course get them over the finish line, because throughout this season, and especially with the schedule being so compacted in the second half of the season, I won't be surprised if one of those players could get themselves back on the IR. Obviously, I'm hoping that's not the case, and LAFC fans are hoping that's not the case. But hey, injuries does happen, and at least what we've seen in these last 2 years, it seems like Carlos Vela has started to suffer some injury play season, because last season he was also having trouble in terms of staying up the IR table. And yeah, there definitely is no guarantee that even though he's now back healthy, he won't be going back to the IR table for the rest of the season. The other thing that has gone wrong for this team is that they're dropping points against big teams, and I really don't need to talk a lot about this, because I've mentioned it many times before, where this is the big issue for LAFC. There could be a team that I think this team is good enough to make it to the playoffs, but once they do make it to the playoffs, and in some way they're kind of finding the same situation of a lot of these teams that might be good enough to make it to the playoffs, but once you get to the playoffs, that's when the problem begins, where they probably don't have enough quality to of course beat against these big teams. Now, when I look at this LAFC team, I do think that they definitely have the talent to go up against some of the best team in the Western Conference, like a Seattle Sounders or Sporting KC. But the problem is, when you look at these first couple of games in the regular season, when they do face against the best of the West, they have struggled against them. And unless if they find a way to, of course, turn that around. And I'm not saying that, looking at these regular season games where they struggle against the team, the big team, is a warning sign that there might not be an MLS Cup contender, because beating big teams in the regular season is completely different than beating big teams in the postseason. But we also have seen before where LAFC, when they do play against those big team in the playoffs, they are unable to pass the test and beat those big teams to move on into the next round. So there's always that question of the fact that as much as I know the media says that this team is going to be the favorites of winning MLS Cup, are they really kind of the favorites unless they get over that hump, and unless if they do, let's say, meet the Seattle Sounders once again in the playoffs, if they do beat the Sounders in the playoffs, maybe that's when we can say that they have finally got over the hump, and they indeed are the team to beat, and the team to potentially win MLS Cup. And then the last thing that has gone wrong for them this season, and this is actually something that hasn't just gone wrong this season, but it's been a problem for LAFC for the past couple of years, which is they always struggle whenever they go up a man. Like, I'm starting to see a pattern where when you look at the last couple of games when LAFC did have a man advantage in these games, they tend to struggle against them. And this is kind of weird to see that has happened, because normally when you of course are up a man, you usually does have the advantage, and that you most likely are going to the team to get all 3 points, or maybe come back from a deficit if you're down on the scoreline, but you have a man up. But that's just not been the case for this LAFC team, and that there's been many times when they're up a man in the game, they are still concede goals to teams that are down a man and down to 10 men for the remaining of the game. And the only way I can say there's a solution to that is maybe they need to have a better mindset or a mentality whenever they go up a man. I mean, I guess maybe it seems like they're kind of being a little bit cocky when they're up a man, and that they kind of feel like it's an automatic win, because even though I said before, for most teams when they're up a man against their opponent, they usually are able to get all 3 points by the end of the day. That's not usually a guarantee, and there also are some times where when you do face against a team that is down to 10 men, it does get harder to try to score against them, because they tend to just go on a compact shape and try to defend for their lives. And right now it just feels like maybe that's the case where whenever LAFC went up a man and the other team decided to go on a compact shape and decided to lock it down in the defense, they tend to have trouble in terms of breaking them down. And also when they all do overcommit to try to break down a bunker, they're getting exposed on the counter attack. And we've seen so many times when LAFC were a man up, most of the goals that they concede when they are a man up are usually from the transition. So that's going to be something that I think Bob Bradley's going to have to figure out. And also the mindset of these players needs to be different, where just because you're a man up doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get all 3 points, and things are just going to be much easier than when it's even strength between both of the team. But yeah, there we have it. That is pretty much it for this video. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're an LAFC fan, do you think things are going to get a lot better? Again, I think things are going to get a lot better, because when you look at the schedule, it does get a little bit easier for them, and they can of course make up for some of the points that they lost. But no doubt that I think there is the biggest concern with this team is the fact that they have problem beating against these big team. And really, this is just a team where I think because the expectation of this team is kind of like MLS Cup or bust situation, this regular season really doesn't matter. It's all about when they do get to the postseason, and if they can able to beat against those big teams, then that's the expectation, and that's kind of the measuring stick of how good the season is. Because I guarantee you, if this team somehow get eliminated in the playoffs and doesn't get to MLS Cup or even winning the trophy this season, it's going to consider another failure of a season in their standard. But let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.